eu gostaria de convidar ao palco ele, que planta os próprios tomates. Ele planta as coisas que ele come. Ele já plantou, inclusive, 500 mil de árvores. Ele é lá do Canadá. Ele nasceu em Toronto. Ele nasceu em Toronto, mora em São Francisco, e vai falar de uma empresa que já está há 5 anos aqui no Brasil, e muita gente aqui conhece e usa. Deixa eu entender aqui, quem aqui usa o Evernote? Quem usa? Caramba, muita gente. Eu também uso, muito. É o meu elefantinho, que não esquece nunca das coisas. Há 5 anos ele está no Brasil, vai fazer uma homenagem para a gente aqui no palco. Ele vai falar para a gente das decisões, os desafios e as lições que o Evernote enfrentou no processo de expansão global. E sobre como uma empresa conhecida nos 4 cantos do mundo conseguiu chegar lá. Chamo ao palco Chris O'Neill, do Evernote. Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
Wow! He's almost a Brazilian. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you.
The stage is yours.
Excellent. Oi, Brazil. Oi, all right. It's fantastic to be here. So, as Rodrigo was saying, I'm Canadian, and we are obviously passionate about hockey. And this is my 2nd time in Brazil. And I think that Canadians' passion for hockey is almost, it pales in comparison to Brazilians' passion for football. So I thought I'd don the jersey just to really show how much I appreciate our love of sport, our joint love of sport. So there's added meaning to the jersey as well. If you see the number 5, I don't know of any famous footballers who wore the number 5, but it's our 5th anniversary. So Evernote has been in Brazil for 5 years, and it's one of our crown jewels. So I'm super excited about that. Really excited to be part of this thriving ecosystem, really be part and see and welcome it. As I said, in Canada, we've gone on a similar journey from a country that really got its start by extracting natural resources and then manufacturing. And there's a resurgence in Canada right now around the digital economy, around the thriving ecosystem of entrepreneurs. And it's amazing to me, and I see it here in Brazil, when you combine great talent and ideas, great education, with some capital, mentorship, and great events like this. So it's a thrill to really watch and learn and be a small part of it. I've really enjoyed the little time I've spent both last night and here at this event. So really, really thrilled to watch what happens here, but more importantly, what happens after here when you guys start translating these ideas into disruptive new products and services that really make a dent in the universe on a global scale. And I really, really want to talk to you today about 3 things. The first is what it's like to run a global company, to have global aspirations and really, as I said, make a dent in the universe, not just here in Brazil, but on a global scale. And secondly, I'll touch upon the changing nature of work, what it means for us and what it might mean in terms of products and services and solutions that address the fundamental changing nature of work. And last but not least, I'll talk a little bit about how we're thinking about emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how we combine the great heritage of Evernote, which is really about capturing your ideas and never forgetting them, to really translate those to make people and teams more productive and more successful. So how does that sound? Sound good? Okay, let's dive in. I'm going to start with some numbers. I'm a bit of a numbers dork as well as being a productivity dork. And really to set the stage, and really the words I'd like to use are scale, global, and love. These are the 3 things that really fuel our mission to unlock the potential of every idea. When we talk about scale, the first is 200 million users. So from our humble beginnings as a company, we now reached 200 million users. Registered users, people who have registered for the service. Other things that they've trusted us with is really their time, which is the most precious resource of all. So we have both global scale, right? We operate in over 200 countries. Literally any country that has access to the internet has users of Evernote, including the Vatican, by the way, which I'm not sure what they're doing with it, but we'll take that. But we have global scale, and time is all of our most precious resource. So people trust us with 600 million hours of their precious time. Now that's time spent in Evernote, hopefully saving time as a good bargain. The aspect of global is not just where we are in terms of the regions in the world, but the presence outside of the United States. So we're headquartered in Silicon Valley, but over 3/4 of our users are outside of the United States, and that number is growing at a very rapid rate, thanks in part to great countries like Brazil. Another statistic is over 51% of our users interact with the service in a language that's not English. So that's a really, really, really important part. And it's been part of our DNA from the beginning. So our founder, Stepan Pachikov, is a Russian gentleman and inventor. And I'll talk about him in a little bit. But I really, really want to encourage you all to have a global mindset. Don't aim to be the best in your region. Don't aim to be the best in Brazil. Aim to be the best in the world. And that mindset will infuse everything that you do. In Brazil, as I said, it's a crown jewel for us. It's one of our fastest growing markets by far. And as I said, in our 5 years, we've accomplished a number of amazing things. It's over 50% of the Latin American market here in Brazil. As I said, it's the third largest source of new users for Evernote globally. We're seeing roughly 300 to 350 new user registrations each and every month. We have eclipsed 12 million users. That's something we announced just this week. So the growth here is phenomenal. And as I said, it's fueling our global aspect overall. In terms of how people use our service, it's pretty amazing to us. We talk about mobile first. Here in Brazil, 91% of our users are registering through a mobile device, which is amazing to us. We see new use cases here that we just don't see anywhere else in the world. So we love Brazil. We love it being here. Another part which is interesting to us is brand awareness. So brand awareness, I saw some hands being shown or raised when Rodrigo asked the question. Of course, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if there were more hands, and hopefully there will be after today. But we really, really love what we're doing here in Brazil, and the brand awareness is as high as it is in the United States. So some things are working really well here in Brazil. And while numbers are great, it keeps us excited, it keeps our investors happy. Really, Evernote is about our users and a user love. And they trust us with up to 10 billion things, 5 billion notes, and then 5 billion further attachments. Really, though, what gets me out of bed in the morning is really the stuff that people do with Evernote. I'll give you a couple of examples. So Amaral is a lawyer, and he loved Evernote. He and his team used Evernote for pretty much everything related to their legal proceedings. He loved it so much, in fact, that he decided to build a business called LegalWorks on top of Evernote's API. And we'll talk a little bit about interoperability and how important that is. But Amaral is a very, very powerful user doing important things. My personal favorite might be Caio, and I think it's because of the name of his company, Elefante Verde. That's a pretty cool name, because everyone loves elephants, right? So he uses Evernote in a similar fashion for a different use case where he's connecting customers with businesses like Yelp. So he uses as a little bit of a central nervous system or an operating system for doing his business called Elefante Verde. A student, Luis, who uses to organize his studies. So students basically are professional note takers. So they really love Evernote. And Luis in particular has used it to organize all of his studies, and he also hosts a podcast. So this is a very common use case where journalists or podcasters or media celebrities organize their thoughts and then all their content programming for their shows. And that's similar to how Marcia uses it as well. So these are 4 of thousands and thousands of stories that I have the privilege of getting to hear every day. And as I said, these are the things that really motivate us at Evernote to really unlock the potential of our users' ideas. And we'll talk more about that throughout the rest of our conversation. But I want to spend some time talking about our founder. I've been at Evernote a short time, 15 months to be precise. And when I started, I spent time with Stepan, the founder of the company, because oftentimes, if you want to find out where you want to take a company, it helps to get connected with the original vision, the original problem that the founder set out to solve. And boy, was my time with Stepan valuable, because it turns out that not only is Stepan just a genius who has so many interests, he would be my vote for the most interesting man in the world. He really, really is passionate about a few things. You see, Stepan has always had poor memory. He has vast interests and pursuits, but he had troubles remembering things and then retrieving them. So he set out to create a digital repository for ideas so that he could retrieve those ideas at a moment's notice. Another part of his founding vision for the company was the advent of the smartphone. He held the first iPhone about 10 years ago and correctly foresaw it changing everything. More specifically, he saw the amount of information overload that he felt overwhelmed him back then. And he saw it exponentially increasing. And boy, was he right. So we've seen the desire to capture ideas and retrieve them mixed with an exponential explosion of ideas. And that's really what fueled Stepan in the early days. He also, as I mentioned, had a very global mindset. He grew up in Russia. He started the company, in fact, in Russia. And that really has infused ourselves from the beginning. So we have operations in many, many different, up to a dozen different places. And as I said, we operate all over the world, thanks in part to Stepan's original vision. You know, I had lunch with Stepan about a month ago in New York, and Stepan believes that medicine will help keep our bodies alive for a long, long time, but not our brains. So Stepan is thinking about ways to not only have an extension of our memory, but really a replacement of our entire brains. So he thinks our bodies will be kept alive, and we need something to keep our brains and remember and evolve our brains. So I won't get into the gory details of brain transplants, but I just wanted to give you a sense as to who started this wonderful company called Evernote, and a little bit of the origins behind the elephant and the notion of never forgetting. The problem that we obsess on from the beginning, and I encourage each and every one of you to obsess on the problem that you're aiming to solve. Not so much the solutions at first, but the problem. This problem of information overload is real, it's growing, and boy, solving it really feels great in some meaningful way. Why are we seeing information overload? Well, first of all, I mentioned the smartphone. We have smartphones connected to the web, connected to social media, and everyone all of a sudden has the ability to broadcast into the world. I think that's a great thing, but I do think it creates some real problems for our brains, because the reality is our brains are amazing at coming up with ideas. That really is what separates us from other mammals, is our creativity, our imagination. But really, our brains are a terrible place to keep ideas. Our memories are terrible. And it's made worse because we think we're good, but neuroscience indicates otherwise. So with an explosion of information, we have our brains drowning in information. So that's really what is behind information overload. And again, it's a growing problem. It's also compounded by some of the nature of work that's changing. We're having an explosion not just of information at large, but the number of applications that are being used in a company is growing quite dramatically as well. So that really doesn't set us up for success. We're being overwhelmed with information, and we're constantly switching between applications and context. So really the problem we aim to solve is more relevant today than when Stepan set out to solve it in starting Evernote. It leads to something called the knowledge doubling curve. So what you're seeing is the number of years it takes for knowledge to double. If you go back to maybe the 40s or so, knowledge used to double approximately every 25 years. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing knowledge doubling approximately every 13 hours by some estimates. So this problem, as I said, is real. And really, this is, of course, a great thing in the world. How can you argue with knowledge doubling? But it does create a certain set of challenges, again, that we're aiming to solve at Evernote. And fundamental to the changing nature of work is this knowledge doubling. And I'd like to talk about two broad themes here. The first is the who, the second is the what. If you think about the who, we have big, broad societal changes happening, and the global economy is being reshaped, and as a result, the number of knowledge workers, those using their minds to make a living, is growing. By some estimates, that number is around 1 billion, around just under a fifth of the world's population, and growing. A second super important part of this who is the composition of the workforce, namely digital natives or millennials. So digital natives or millennials make up almost 50% of the workforce. In the next couple of years, that number will eclipse 50% by most estimates. So what? Well, digital natives didn't grow up with the physical metaphors of productivity. Right? They've had a supercomputer in their pocket from the time they actually interacted with the web. Their expectations of what it means to be successful are really high. So if they're using WhatsApp or a messaging service in their personal lives, they expect something to be equally great, if not better, in the workplace. So this is fundamentally changing the expectations of over half and increasingly more of the workplace. The second is the what. So we're seeing interoperability in the workplace. So applications that talk to one another, through the use of open source technologies and APIs that talk to one another. The fundamental nature of work is really being shaped by this interoperability. We're freeing ourselves from the tyranny of monopolies that controlled the workplace. And we're also seeing an automation of uncreative tasks. So there's a lot of heat on this topic, but a lot of the non-creative, monotonous work is being automated. I think net of that is very good, but it does place more pressure on the creative and the collaborative parts of our workplace. So the who and the what, and I could go on with other trends, to be clear, but the who and the what of work is fundamentally being changed, and that creates massive opportunities, I think, for companies. Hopefully many of you in the audience, and certainly we like to think of it as the next wave of growth for us, because over 70% of how people use Evernote is for work. However they define work, however you define work, people use our service to make them more productive, make them more organized, to capture ideas, and then hopefully turn them into something over time. And that's the bet we're fundamentally making, that not only do we make individuals more successful, but that we're making teams of individuals more successful. And how are we doing that, and what problem are we aiming to solve? Well, I talked about some of these earlier, but really, there are 2 or 3 big ones. The clock, right? How many of you have experienced this, where you're looking for something, you're asked the question, I know you shared something with me, but where did you share it? Where can I find that? Anyone feel that? Anyone have that experience, right? Yeah, of course. We're all experiencing this, and by most estimates, we waste about 2.5 hours each and every day looking for stuff. And that's just productivity that you never get back. So fundamentally, we're looking for stuff, right? We have way more information than we've ever had before. It makes logical sense that we have a harder time finding precisely what we need when we need it. That's thing number one. Thing number two, I mentioned these app islands. So the millennials and the digital natives coming into the workforce with these high expectations, coupled with the lower cost of software, coupled with the high quality of that software, means we have a proliferation of the applications that are being used in the workplace. Someone can pull out a corporate credit card and simply buy an application because they view that as a differentiator for their job. And the cost is such that we can do that now. That's fantastic. It's so great. We're seeing so many parts of the workplace being transformed by these types of applications. The other side of it, however, is that we're constantly switching between different app islands. These apps don't necessarily talk to one another, even though they can through APIs. We waste about 40% of our time context switching, and that's a challenge as well. So we're spending a lot of time looking for things. We're spending a lot of time switching between context. And last, and probably the most important, is that we're spending more and more of our time collaborating with one another. Whether that's across distributed offices, distributed functions, different places in the office even, we're spending up to 80% of our time in so-called collaborative activities. Now, of course, this is good, right? This is allowing us to do things we never thought before. It's making our teams more successful, including different perspectives and functions in ways we could never do before. The flip side, however, is it's crowding out the time to actually do what's called deep work, right? The work where you're focused on something that's cognitively really hard, and you can really move something from an idea to action. That is being crowded out. So really, we're aiming to help people be more productive by addressing those 2 or 3 fundamental things of, hey, I can't find something. Oh man, I'm wasting time by multitasking and switching in between. And then making that 80% of our time more productive when we're in a meeting or when we're going through email or social media, etc. How does that translate into our view of productivity? Well, really, we look at it in 4 ways. The first is content creation and information management. This is where Evernote lives. You have an idea, you have a spark of an idea, you don't know how big or small that idea is, but you think it's going to bring you joy or bring you happiness or success somewhere in your life, so you capture it in Evernote. I like to sometimes call it as owning the beginning. Where did the idea or where the inspiration really started? That's a pretty big slice of the market, and we're not alone here as well. Secondly is the storage, right? So if you think of companies like Dropbox or Box, right, fundamentally they were a digital version. They started as a digital version of what was a physical thing, storing something. So storing ideas is a big part of the market as well. Communication and collaboration, you see exciting companies like Slack. Microsoft recently got into the game here with Microsoft Teams. Companies like Skype, which were acquired by Microsoft, also playing here. HipChat by Atlassian. This is the notion of collaborating and communicating in and around stuff. So there's communication that needs to happen amongst teams, and this is a very important part of the market as well. Last but not least is task management. So you have an idea, you have a project, you have something very important to get done. How do you break it down into discrete steps? How do you assign ownership and responsibility to each of those specific sub-steps so that the task actually gets done? This in total is a very nice and big and growing market. This is a multi-billion-dollar market that's growing north of 20, in some cases 30%. Our aim as a company is to grab more than our fair share by doing a couple things. And I'll talk about those for the next couple of slides. First is, as I said, own the beginning. I think the most valuable asset in all these in the market here is really the content. Content is king. The ideas that people trust with places and services like Evernote matter. So we really want to aim to be great there. Remove all friction from the notion of having an idea to capturing it in Evernote. We'll use technologies like machine learning. We'll use things like smartphones and voice technology to remove that friction. Okay, that's step 1. Once we have the idea born, the seed of the idea born, we want to help evolve it and ultimately connect it to action through some lightweight task management. And the other parts of the circle, I think, Storage is not a very happy place. I think that's a race to zero. So if you're going to try and build a business based upon storing bits and bytes and files, I wouldn't recommend it. The other circle, collaboration, is super important, but we aim to partner with all sorts of the providers, some of which I mentioned, in a Switzerland-like fashion, right? We don't care how people will collaborate and communicate, but we care that they do, and they care that they can do so in Evernote seamlessly, easy, in a way that works for them. So that's how we aim to approach this market for team collaboration. The secret sauce will be the combination of the ideas that our users entrust to Evernote with machines. So this graphic aims to represent the marriage of these two things. And I think the debate is too often framed as man versus machine, or machines replacing humans. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as a trade that says, what are humans great at? And what are machines great at? And how will we trade these two things to make some magic happen? Okay? Earlier this year, we announced that we're going to move to a public cloud. Okay, well, a little history on that. When Stepan came up with the idea for Evernote, early indications were the ability to capture an idea and then retrieve that idea anywhere and everywhere was a key to our success, and he was right. When we started the company, however, there was no such thing as AWS. Amazon hadn't done that, at least for the public world. Google's cloud wasn't available. Microsoft's cloud wasn't available. So we had to build it ourselves. So that's what we did. Fast forward 10 years later, there are great public cloud offerings. And part of success in a business is focusing on where you really can add value and differentiate. Us lifting and shifting boxes is not one of those areas. We can get, like a utility, access to the cloud and differentiate on the user experience and artificial intelligence and other aspects of really making our users more successful. So we decided to move to the public cloud. The other element of it, in addition to focusing on what you're truly great at, is access to artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, as I've said, users trust us with their most precious ideas. Machine learning can help organize that information. Machine learning can also provide context to really start to translate those ideas into action. I'll talk about a couple other key themes, but I fundamentally believe that we're seeing the end of the mobile era of computing and the beginning of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we're really only just beginning to get started on this next evolution, or revolution, I should say. And it's going to be amazing. So hopefully many of you are betting on this evolution or revolution in ways that will unlock value that we can't even dream of. And I'm sure many of you are. Another aspect is the changing inputs, right? So I'm excited about machine learning on a lot of levels, but one of them is the changing inputs. So QWERTY is a crazy anachronism from the past. I don't know why we still have it. I mean, it was basically invented to keep typewriter keys from sticking, right? But we have it. We have typing on our thumbs, right? So we mentioned 91% of our users in Brazil entered into our world through a smartphone. So, I mean, by my estimates, or estimates I can see, we type at about on a keyboard at about 60 to 80 words per minute. I mean, some people are slower or faster than that, but that's the average range. On a smartphone with our thumbs, we're about 20 words a minute. The other inputs in here lead to about at least 3x those of a keyboard. So voice, like what I'm doing right now, I'm probably talking, because I'm a little nervous on stage, at about 200 words per minute. That's about 3 or 4 times what I can type on a computer. So we're going to see some revolutionary improvements in voice input into devices like smartphones and into services like Evernote. That's transformational, and we're starting to see the tipping point with voice. Siri opened up with the advent of iOS 10. Apple has opened up their platform Siri for the first time. That's huge. Microsoft has claimed that Cortana is now at parity with humans in terms of understanding voice, right, and translating it into actual meaning. That's huge. Google, 20% of the searches that Google sees are actually voice these days. So voice is here. Another one I forgot is Amazon. So Amazon with their sleeper hit called the Echo or Alexa, and just last week Google announced a version that's very similar. We're starting to see voice become the norm even within the home. So really, really betting massively on voice. We've hit tipping point, in my opinion, and we'll start to see the benefits of this because it will be a much more natural input to all of our devices. And we'll start to see some removal of friction, and we'll start to see some use cases on the other side. So if you can imagine a meeting today, they suck, don't they, right? Like, often don't have an agenda. Too many people or too few people are in the room. You talk about things usually multiple times. Action items and notes are sometimes taken, but not usually. And then you kind of find yourself in a room 7 days later asking the same questions. Doesn't that sound familiar? Here's how I see the future of this, right? Machine learning will basically be integrating calendars to basically ensure that the right people show up when and where they need to. The agenda will be auto-created by basically seeing what topics or debates are brewing within a company. And then the notes will be automatically transcribed, probably using a smartphone, with action items extracted using natural language processing, with accountability assigned in real time to say, oh, that meeting item, Julia owns it, or Bob owns this one. And then when we get back together if we need to, maybe we don't, but if we do need to talk about certain things, we're doing so from a position where action is actually taken on the things that are talked about. I think that's part of the future we're helping to shape and create, and it's exciting because we'll waste less and less of our time doing non-productive things. To close, I mean, the aspiration is to really be organized without organizing. So I sometimes think of this as like going to the, having six-pack, not that I have a six-pack, without having to go to the gym, right? So how does that work? Well, I mentioned machine learning. So machine learning will understand the content and the context around all the things that happen in your life, and will help to organize that information auto-magically. Right now, services like Evernote are way too manual. They're really static. You have to actually take information. You have to scan information into the service. You have to type into it, or you have to speak into it. It's very manual. I see a world where it's dynamic. I see a world where the context is understood at a moment's notice when it comes into the service. And then it auto-magically organizes like things and wraps context around each and every one of the items that find their way into Evernote. And then the other idea, this notion of turning ideas into action. Ideas are great, right? All great companies start with an idea, but really execution, turning those ideas into action are really what matters. That's when the real value in the world is unlocked. That's when the potential becomes reality. So machine learning can help us by connecting to other tools that are used within your life and really integrate those ideas into those other tools to make them come to life. So that's largely it. I want to thank you for having me here. It's so amazing to be in Brazil. I hope that some of these ideas have sparked something in you, in what you're doing or what you may do in the future. I hope you've enjoyed thoughts on what it's like to run a global company, having a global mindset, and in what we do. Hope you learned a little bit about the changing nature of work and some of the exciting technologies like artificial intelligence and more specifically machine learning and what it's doing and the opportunities that those technologies are creating to really unlock potential. Really, we view our mission as unlocking the potential of each and every one of your ideas to really make you successful, to make you more productive at whatever you're doing. So, obrigado. It's a pleasure and sincere honor to be here on stage. We've carved out time for questions. If anyone does have a question, I would love, you can ask me anything. You can ask me about hockey. You can ask me about Evernote. You can ask me about my favorite steak. here in Brazil. Anything's fair game. So I don't know if there are roaming microphones or if people have questions. Thank you very much. Obrigado. Other questions?
Dois. Oi. Chris, incredible.
Thank
This is
you.
music for my ears.
And you like music.
Auto-organize. Wow, incredible. I was there, listening to you. Are you going to open for Q&A?
I am open for Q&A.
Okay, so Julia is here to translate to you.
Okay,
Okay?
great.
Thank you. Julia.
Nós temos 2 microfones, um aqui, do outro lado. Quem tiver interesse de fazer pergunta, pode vir aqui comigo, o microfone é fixo, ou lá do outro lado também, por favor. Pode fazer a pergunta em português, que será traduzida para ele.
Hey, who do you consider to be your main competitor? Why? And how do you play to win?
What was the last part of your question?
How do you plan to win?
Okay. Thank you. I love to win, almost as much as I hate to lose. So we're going to win. The short answer is pen and paper is our competitor, really. So much of the world today, it varies actually by country and region. In most countries, it's about 50-50. So people who are knowledge workers, about 50% of people use pen and paper, and then 50% of people use a digital note-taking application of some form. It could be something very simple, like Apple Notes product or Simple Notes, or it could be something a little more involved like Evernote. But really, that is the big thing. So for us, creating awareness for the benefits of capturing ideas is number one. Okay, so if you look in history, in the long arc of history, about successful people, could be inventors like Thomas Edison or Picasso or anyone like who've really done like spectacular things. They have one thing in common: they take notes, right? Like take notes. If you want to achieve something, take notes. So I don't care really how you take notes. I mean, I do, but just take notes. That's my unsolicited advice today. In the digital note-taking category, we have a whole bunch of competitors. I mean, I talked about those 4 circles in the team collaboration, so it's very crowded, right? You have people like Microsoft and Google, Dropbox, Trello, Asana. I mean, there's all sorts of people converging on this. I mean, Pipefy is another great company here I got to meet last night. There's all sorts of people converging on this. We all see the same thing. But in the note-taking application world, so Microsoft has a product called OneNote. They've drawn deep inspiration from Evernote, and imitation is a sincere form of flattery, and we're really flattered by the work that Microsoft's doing. We have lots of kind of crappy note-taking apps that we compete with, but we do view ourselves as the best in the category. We've created the category. We are the best in the category, and we continue to differentiate. No, I talked about it a little bit before, little bit removing friction from the ingestion of ideas. I want us to have 0 friction between the time you have an idea and the time it finds itself into Evernote. So capturing thoughts and ideas at the speed at which you come up with them or faster. Secondly, we need to figure out team collaboration better than we have today. We have about 20% of our business that's used in the workplace, but we need to almost invert that. And that's really those 4 concentric circles. So that's that part. And then we'll do so by really combining the relevance of the information that exists in our users' Evernote with things like machine learning to really unleash the potential of what's in there, right? Either connecting the idea at just the right time with a tool in a meeting-like setting, or other things which we haven't invented yet, but we're betting really heavily on machine learning and more specifically voice. So that's our rough plan to win, but we have no shortage of competitors, and that's a sign, I think, of a good market. But also fires up the internal spirit at Evernote to win.
Chris, you've mentioned in your speech about brain capacity, and I would like to know how Evernote addresses the monotasking and multitasking behavior, the concept, the issue. in your tools, in your features in the app?
Yeah. So the question is about multitasking. So multitasking is a myth, by the way, right? People think, oh, millennials and people who have technology around, it's BS. You cannot multitask. They're scientifically proven your brain can only really focus on one thing at a time. Okay, what are we doing about it? So one of the big bets that we have is, we call it the professional workspace. So we want to allow you to go into a place where you can do your best work, your deep work. So the product, you'll start to see the product evolve to remove distraction. So there'll be a time and space when you literally go into a deep work zone, and Evernote should facilitate that work. And I'll give you some examples. So combining and collapsing ideas. So if you want to integrate with different notes you've taken, machine learning will allow you to do that automatically. So you don't have to go hunting around and grabbing lots of different things. You can combine them automatically. That's one. One of the other things we're looking at is task management within that. So over half of our users use the product for task management. So if you're in a note, you're typing away, we should be able to automatically extract tasks and save those for you so that you can basically be doing your thinking, your creative time, and then you can shift into more execution, getting things done mode. So we're going to really orient the product around what we call a professional workspace. So it evolved from an archive where is a repository for your ideas, to a workspace where you're actually going to be working on something. Authors love the product in this way. Increasingly, other people do as well. So that's roughly the plan to win. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi,
Yes.
Chris.
Yeah, hi.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm a huge fan of your product.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions. There's a lot of research saying that people that handwrite their notes tend to remember it better. Do you guys plan on creating a version or an application to integrate that better with your product?
Yeah, he's right. There's science, the neuroscience suggests that when you handwrite, you activate different parts of your brain. And the other part that happens with writing is you can't, like when you type, you can actually transcribe a conversation. You're not actually thinking about what someone's saying. You're just like mindlessly typing. So when you write, you can't keep up. So you actually are forced to distill the essence. So the science is right. One of the inputs I didn't talk about today, but we're very bullish on is actually the digital pen. So if you look at iPad Pro, the Surface is growing about like 68%. So these kind of 2-in-1 notebooks. I think you'll start to see the collapse of tablets, right? And you'll start to see notebooks be touchable. I don't know what Apple's waiting for, by the way, on that. But Surface is taking off, and you'll start to see the quality of the actual digital pens start to increase. So we're very bullish on that. It will be very good for our business, and it will start to get the benefits that you're describing with writing, in addition to the digital capture and the ability to search and understand handwriting, which we can do today, but it's only at the very beginning. I think even better is voice, though. So you can actually interact with a conversation and really have it transcribed using voice, and then the essence using machine learning and bots will distill the meeting down to what was actually talked about and extract action items. And you can be present, and maybe you type the odd thing or write it. I'm not sure how it will evolve, but you can be present in a meeting, and then you can actually capture all the value of it in a different way. But the handwriting is an important part of that, and will be for some time. Yeah, over here.
Olá, tudo bem? É o seguinte, tem uma funcionalidade de vocês que eu gosto muito. É melhor que para não. Eu gosto muito de uma funcionalidade de vocês chamada Clipper. Você salva uma matéria online no seu Evernote. E vocês descontinuaram essa funcionalidade. Como que é o processo de vocês de saber o que melhorar, o que desenvolver e o que descontinuar, como é esse caso?
So I really love the web clipper, where you can
Obrigado.
clip, yeah. And he's asking why we discontinued web clipper and how we listen to feedback on what to improve and keep with our product.
Yeah, well, thank you, obrigado. Web Clipper, for those you don't know, if you're traveling across the web, either on a mobile device or on a desktop or a browser, and you see something that you want to keep, you can clip it. It's called a web clipper, and it goes automatically into Evernote. And just to correct it, we actually have not discontinued it at all. In fact, we have a whole team that's sole purpose in life is to make that clipper awesome. So if you see something, save it to Evernote, instantly goes in, and then you can search for that at some other future point. It's very much in line with my vision for removing friction. So that clipper alone generates, if it were a standalone platform, would be our biggest platform in terms of number of notes and content that gets into Evernote. So it's a miraculous product, and people, it's a kind of a marketing challenge as much as a technology challenge, where we're really trying to promote that, make people aware of it, because once people use the web clipper, they're hooked with Evernote. So. You over there? Yeah.
I'm sorry, just a second. We have time for one more question.
Okay, he has the last question. Great.
Oi, Cris. Eu queria saber o que você pensa a respeito da questão do acesso offline, né? Porque eu estou desenvolvendo uma plataforma de educação que não dependa muito da conectividade. Eu sou do estado do Amazonas e eu estou desenvolvendo algo que funcione lá na floresta, para as pessoas terem acesso à educação. E eu queria saber o que o Evernote está desenvolvendo, pensando a respeito da questão do offline, né? Apesar de ter melhorado muito a infraestrutura, mas aqui no Brasil a gente sofre muito problemas de conectividade.
Okay.
So he wants to know about Evernote offline and what we are doing to improve, because he has an education startup in Amazon, and it's really data and connectivity is really complicated.
So one of the things that is a huge benefit of Evernote is the offline access. That's one of the premium features, because it's complicated. It's valued by our users, and it's complicated technically. Without going into a lot of specifics, we're rebuilding certain aspects of our service to be agnostic to online or offline. So you could seamlessly go between the two. So all I can say is we hear you, we feel your pain. Our users are really excited about this. So, and the technology has evolved in amazing ways. So we have an internal project that is rebuilding Evernote to be very much aware and comprehending almost an agnostic of state, meaning whether you're online or offline. So more to come on that, but it's really fundamental to our future. And thank you for the good work you do. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll have to leave it there. Obrigado. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward for the next 5 years here in Brazil.